You know exactly what you need to do. You know the assignment is due. You know the work is important. You know that starting today would make tomorrow easier. And yet, you tell yourself you'll do it later. Just 5 more minutes, 1 more video, 1 more scroll. And suddenly, it's midnight. The work is still waiting. And you're sitting there wondering, why didn't I just start? Here's the strange part. You don't actually want to fail. You don't hate your goals. And you're probably not as lazy as you think you are. So why do you keep delaying the things that matter most? Because procrastination isn't always a problem with time. Sometimes, it's a problem with emotion. Imagine a man sitting alone in his room. In front of him is a desk. On the desk is his laptop. The screen is open. The work is waiting. He looks at it. He knows what he has to do. But something inside him says, not yet. So he picks up his phone. Just for a minute. 1 minute becomes 10. 10 becomes 30. And suddenly, he feels better. The pressure is gone, at least for now. And this is where the trap begins. Your brain has just learned something. When a task makes you feel uncomfortable, avoiding it makes the discomfort disappear. Not permanently, but instantly. And the brain loves instant relief. Think about it. You have 2 choices. One path is uncomfortable now, but gives you a reward later. The other path feels good now, but creates a bigger problem later. Your brain often chooses the first reward it can get. That's why you can spend an hour watching random videos, while knowing you have something important to finish. It's not because you don't care. It's because your brain is focused on what feels easier, right now. But there's another layer to this. Sometimes, you're not avoiding the task. You're avoiding the possibility of failing at it. Think about someone who wants to start a business. They spend weeks researching, watching videos, making plans, buying notebooks, creating strategies. But they never actually begin, because as long as they don't start, they can still imagine themselves succeeding. The moment they begin, failure becomes possible. And that's uncomfortable, so the brain creates an excuse. I need more information. I'll start when I'm ready. I'll do it tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. Because the real problem was never a lack of time. It was fear. Fear of doing it badly. Fear of being judged. Fear of discovering that you're not as good as you hoped. And sometimes, the task itself becomes connected to all of those feelings. So every time you think about starting, your brain remembers the discomfort. And you avoid it again. This is how procrastination becomes a cycle. You avoid the task. You feel temporary relief. Then the deadline gets closer. The pressure increases. You feel guilty. You promise yourself you'll never do it again. And then the next difficult task appears, and the cycle starts over. But here's the good news. You don't have to completely change your personality to break this cycle. You don't need more motivation. You need to make starting easier. Don't tell yourself, I have to finish this entire project. That's too big. Instead, make the first step almost impossible to refuse. Open the document. Write 1 sentence. Read 1 page. Work for 5 minutes. That's it. Because the hardest part of most tasks isn't doing the work. It's crossing the invisible line between thinking and starting. Once you begin, your brain often stops fighting you. The task becomes less mysterious. The fear becomes smaller, and momentum begins to take over. Imagine standing at the bottom of a mountain. Looking at the top can feel overwhelming, but you don't climb a mountain in 1 jump. You take 1 step, then another, and eventually, you look back and realize you've come much farther than you thought. That's how progress works. Not through one massive burst of motivation, but through small actions, repeated when you don't feel like taking them. So the next time you catch yourself saying, I'll do it later, pause and ask yourself one question. What am I actually trying to avoid? Is it the work? Or is it the feeling that comes with the work? Maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's uncertainty. Maybe you're afraid you won't be good enough. Whatever it is, name it. Because you can't change a pattern you refuse to see. You don't need to become a completely different person tomorrow. You just need to stop giving your future self every problem that your present self is afraid to face. The life you want is usually hidden behind the things you keep postponing. That conversation, that project, that habit, that first step. And maybe the person you're trying to become isn't waiting for you at the end of some perfect future. Maybe that person is created every time you choose to begin, even when you're uncomfortable, even when you're afraid, even when you don't feel ready. So don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you feel like it. Just start. Because sometimes the difference between the life you have and the life you want isn't one huge decision. It's one small action. You finally stop postponing.